If you can dream it, we can help you create it. Welcome to the You Create podcast, the show that teaches you how to take the power and flexibility of a Stepcraft 3D CNC system and turn your ideas into reality. So let your ideas flow, because we want to know, what will you create?
Welcome to the You Create podcast. My name is Eric, and I'll be your host. And I really want to thank everybody for joining me this week. And I want to thank you for all the positive feedback that we've been getting for the previous episodes. We're really trying hard here to come up with content ideas that are kind of geared to the newbie, but still have some stuff that maybe somebody who's got a little bit more experience in CNC will relate to and will find useful. So we're definitely working on it. We've got a lot of ground to cover here in the next couple of months. So I'm excited about that, and I want to get started this week with talking about what we did this weekend. I know last week I talked about a big fair here in New England called the Big E, and it's something that I've been contemplating doing a booth for Stepcraft, figuring to get it out in front of a lot of people during a couple week period. However, it's a pretty big commitment, and before I go doing something like that, I really wanted to take a shot at a local fair. I want to talk to people to see what they think about our machines, or what they think about the technology in general. That was kind of my bigger aim. And so we did a booth. It was about 12-foot booth, and it looked nice. I'll put a picture up online to show you guys what we did. The people that would come by, we had on one table, we had a Stepcraft 300 that was 3D printing. And on the other table, we had a Stepcraft 420 that was doing some milling and carving and stuff. So we had a lot of people walk up to us, and the first thing they saw when they walked down the aisle was the 3D printer. So they look at us and they say, "Oh, this is a 3D printer." And we would have to then go into an explanation that, no, it's not just a 3D printer. It's a universal desktop CNC machine that has the capability of milling and carving, engraving, cutting, graphics, things like that. And it was interesting. It was a little challenging. It kind of was a mouthful every time that we spoke and described it to somebody. If we mentioned, what I found was that if we mentioned the word CNC, that scared some people away, because if you know what CNC is, or you've been around the block, or maybe in a past job 20 years ago you had some experience with CNC, it was a very technical involved process to run a CNC machine, where nowadays it's pretty much point and click. It's come a long way, but for some of those people, they still had that negative stigma about it and a little bit of fear when you mentioned it. So now I also found that our machines have a huge interest by women and families, and because of the universal nature of the machine, if you're a husband and you love to do woodworking, but the wife loves to do scrapbooking, well, our machine just happens to have an attachment that makes both people happy. So as a result of that, we were getting a lot of women that were coming up to the booth and asking us what it was. And of course, when you talk to, most women, they don't know what CNC is at all. So you're just throwing a word out there that they can't really relate to. So the feedback we got was amazing. The people, our tagline is, "What will you create?" So, when somebody comes up and they see the machine and they see it 3D printing on one side, and, a lot of kids would come up and go around it. And a lot of people were telling us how schools now have 3D printers, in their school, which is awesome. That's great. I want my kids to go to school and have experience with this new technology, because it's the future. So a lot of people would look at it, and then they would start to think, "Oh, geez, I could make game pieces with this machine," or, "I could do this, or I could do that." And that's the whole point. That's what we want people to think about when they see our systems or this type of technology in general. The other side, they were looking at milling, and we were doing some carving jobs and things like that. And they look at it and they say, "Oh, I could make this for our house," or, we could do this. And then we demoed the drag knife attachment for our machine, and we were showing some people how easy it is to take a basic design and cut it out of construction paper or, vellum or something like that. So if you were into crafts or scrapbooking, or maybe you're a school teacher, an art teacher, something like that, the machine has a definite use for that. And we had just a lot of people that expressed interest and just couldn't believe everything that it was capable of doing. But yeah, we were still stuck on what to call it. Is it a universal desktop CNC machine? Is it a home 3D workstation? Is it, there's a lot of different ways that we could describe it. And, we tried to come up with some things, and I would say different things. And that's one of the reasons why we did this fair, because I wanted to talk to, for lack of a better word, I'll call them laymen, just people that are not familiar with this space. And it was a local town fair, so it wasn't like everybody was coming there expecting to see a CNC company there. So it was kind of a big surprise to everybody who walked by. And I would say different things. I would look at their face and see what their reaction was until I found some stuff that registered or they can, identify with it. A lot of people were concerned about the software. And, one of the common questions I got is, could you just draw something and have it printed out? Well, yeah, for the most part, it's, you can do that. There are a couple of steps. There's no machine that I'm aware of that has completely simplified that process to where you go to file, print, and just send it to the machine like you would, an inkjet printer. However, we believe that we've simplified it some. I mean, we still have some work to do. That's why we're doing videos every week and kind of tutorials to take people through it. But it's not as complicated as you might think. And, there is software out there, specifically like the Vectric software, which is what we were using at the fair. Very, very simple to use. I showed a few people, gave them a demo how easy it was to, draw their name and then have it mill it out, out of a piece of plywood. And the whole process took maybe 10 minutes tops. So that convinced some people, especially anybody that might have thought, CNC, you had to sit there with paper tapes, with punch holes in them, like in the old days, or that you had to, program G code. That's all a thing of the past. So it was a lot of fun. It was interesting. And the first day it was a little crappy because the weather was bad. It was cold and rainy, and there wasn't that many people there. But the next day really made up for it. It was a beautiful day out, and we saw thousands of people, and it was really interesting. A lot of really good questions regarding the technology and what does the machine do? What can it cut? How fast? How high? All the different things that people tend to ask. One of the things that was interesting was people were coming up to us and, they would hear what we have to say, or they would listen to us talking to somebody else. And of course, the next common question is, well, how much does it cost? Well, our machines start at, $8.99 and they go up from there. And the most expensive machine being around $19.99. So it was really interesting to me because when I said $8.99, I was expecting more people to kind of be like, oh, wow, that's expensive, But I would say 90% of the people that we told the pricing to thought it was fair and didn't have any concern at all about that. So that's a good sign for anybody in CNC, because it means that people can appreciate what the machine is doing, and they know that technology has a cost to it. And we're fortunate because we can keep our machines, for the most part, under $2,000 for a complete system, which tends to be a kind of a viable number for people. I mean, I know a lot of 3D printers that are on the market, take MakerBot or something like that, where their machines, the average machine is over $2,000, and that's all it is a 3D printer. So, whether you're looking at Stepcraft or other CNC machines, there are a lot of options out there, and that are relatively affordable for people. Now, we've actually gone a step further, and we are introducing financing this week through a couple different companies with some very creative financing packages. So we're just trying to make it as easy as possible for somebody to get this technology and introduce it to their family and put it in their homes, because it's really interesting to me to see what people think and what people are doing with their machines. It's awesome. There was a customer of ours that started a forum or group on Facebook called Stepcraft Crafters Club. And I since bought a domain name that points directly to it. So it's simply stepcraftcraftersclub.com. It brings you right to that group. And these are all Stepcraft owners that are doing different things, or maybe they have technical questions, or they're trying to set up a job, or they want to talk about material or bits or things like that. And the community is awesome because they're helping each other out. And they're showing some really incredible things that they've created. And so it's a lot of fun to see that, and in such a short period of time, see what people are doing with, our machines. And I follow a few other groups on Facebook too that are about general CNC work and sign making and things like that. And it's pretty incredible. I love seeing what people are capable of doing. And the coolest part is that, most of these really awesome projects that I see, it's just you and me. It's just simple people. It's not a business. It's just somebody that, wanted to make a puzzle for their kid or something like that. And they have the machine in their garage, and this is what, they come up with. So very exciting to see that. It was a really good experience for us at this fair to get an idea of what we need to do marketing wise, and to kind of expand our tutorials to reach different people based on different skill levels and different knowledge of this technology. So we enjoyed it. And to anybody that came to the fair that might be listening to this podcast, thank you so much for stopping by and talking with Daniel, my son, Dan, our technical resident guru here, and myself. I appreciate that. So I want to talk a little bit about business, starting a business with CNC. I think that that's important because a lot of people when they saw this machine at the fair, they were looking at it saying, hey, we could make this and then sell it. We could do craft fairs. We could do, local community fairs and things like that. Or we could start a website and we could sell things that we make. And I heard that probably, a couple dozen times at least over the course of this fair. And it got me thinking, because my background is in sales and marketing and business development. And so I love the opportunity to help somebody either start a business or grow their existing business. And I love coming up with creative marketing ideas and things like that. So we were talking about it, and I said, you could easily buy a Stepcraft machine, and because of all the attachments and things, if you have some basic design knowledge of Inkscape or SketchUp, or even if you just use VCarve Pro or Cut2D for the basic stuff, and all you want to do is say make wooden welcome signs. There's so many options out there to be able to do that. And part of it is the creativeness that you have in making something with the CNC machine, and the other part of it is how you finish the sign. I'll give you an example. There was a guy in a booth next to us that made these cutting boards and trivets and things, and they were made out of laminated kind of exotic hardwoods. And so they had checkerboards and things like that, and a different color woods, and they were laminated together, and he did like an amazing job. They were beautiful. And we were talking to him for quite a bit during especially the first day, because it was so dead at the fair. And he's selling these things they started like $40. They went up to like $60 or $70. And he certainly has a lot of time into these things. And the quality, it's amazing. It's second to none. And I asked him if he had a CNC, and he didn't. He has a lot of other machines, obviously, to make these things happen, but he doesn't have a CNC. And he said he has had people in the past to ask him to carve something, and he does it by hand, and it takes a while. And so over the course of the fair, I was talking to him, and I was talking to customers because they would walk by him first and then to us. And one of the things that came to my mind was, I would say, they say, well, what can you do with your machine? And I said, well, here's an example. You could go over there and buy one of his cutting boards or his trivets, and then you could come over here and we could put it on the machine and we can engrave your name on it, or your family name, or, John and Debbie married, 2015 or something like that. And the idea is that you could take something that is either pre-made or at a store, or take something such as what this guy created and turn it into a customized project using a CNC machine. Now, I went after the second day. I was talking to this gentleman, and I said, listen, these things are amazing. You're incredibly talented. The one thing you're missing out on is the fact that these cutting boards, these trivets would make amazing wedding gifts or bridal shower gifts or something. And what's keeping them from making them perfect is the fact that they're not personalized. Now, I said, take a cutting board. On a cutting board, you're going to have one side that you're going to use. Obviously, it's a cutting board. That's where you're going to use with your knife and everything. But on the other side, why couldn't you engrave, John and Debbie married June 2015 or something like that on the back and personalize it? The quality of these things was so amazing that this is actually, I couldn't even believe that you would actually use this. It's like something you would hang on your wall or leave on your hutch or something as a showpiece. But what I was telling him, I said, why don't you mill one side and personalize it? And then, the other side is the side that you use. So once you're done making dinner, you clean it off, and then you put it on your hutch or on a display rack or something, and you show the carved side. And he looked at me and he said, yeah, that's actually a really good idea. I guess his big thing is that he'd always done that type of thing by hand, and he does this as a part-time business, so he doesn't have a lot of time to do the customization. So I asked him if he could bring me in a piece of stock, and he brought a piece in the next day, and it was before it was finished or anything. So I took it, and we wanted to carve something into it, and he'd asked me if we could carve a rose into it, and I didn't have a rose, but I did find a free piece of 3D clip art online that I was able to bring into VCarve and actually carve that out of the surface. So we took that, and we carved it into it. I showed it to him afterwards, and he was kind of blown away. He's like, wow, the quality is amazing. Now, all I had with me was an 1/8" ball nose end mill. I could have had it be even more detailed if I'd brought a 1/16" and done a final pass with that. But still, the quality was really, really good. So that got him thinking. So as people walked by his booth and then they came and talked to me, I would show them now that sample, and I would say, look, this is something that you can do with our machine, like with his cutting board. And there was a couple of people who actually went back to him and asked him if he could personalize his cutting boards or his trivets. So at the end of the fair, he came to me, and now we're talking about hooking him up with a machine so that he could start exploring a little bit of the customization and personalization of the things that he creates. So I'm going to put a link to his website on the show notes because it's awesome. And if you have interest in that type of thing, I encourage you to go and check it out and make a purchase from him, because it was really, really talented guy. So the point I'm making with all this is that here's a guy who already has a little side business, but the addition of a CNC machine now opens him up, especially on the web. He can do an awful lot with personalization and customization of things and expand his market to reach a whole new group of people who are looking for custom gift ideas. So I think that I'm excited because he lives actually right down the road from our shop, and I want to be able to work with him a little bit, and it'll be cool to use him as kind of a test bed to show what we can do with taking a product, customizing them, and turn it into something that can help him grow and expand his business. Because I think that's something that probably a lot of you who are listening to this are trying to think of too. I mean, if you're going to go out and you're going to spend a couple $1,000s on a machine, it would be great if there was a way that you could make some side money to pay for it. Or maybe your goal is to, go on vacation or something like that. And it's fun. So working with these machines is CNC design, to see something that you put together on screen actually come to fruition in real life in front of you is pretty gratifying. And I want to see us try to do more to help that process along. So if you are considering the idea of starting a business, one thing I encourage you to do is go on to Google and do a search for whatever it is you're interested in. Say you want to make signs, or you want to make plaques, or do engraving or whatever. Do a search in your local area and see what other businesses are out there doing the same thing. You may find that there's an influx of businesses that are doing exactly what you are, which you may want to custom tailor your business to not be a me too, but to provide some additional value. Maybe there's guys making little trinkets or whatnot, but you take it a step further by doing the same thing, but then offering personalization. So there's a lot of flexibility that opens up by owning a machine like this. I'll give you another example. When I asked that guy to bring us a scrap piece of material so that we can mill into one or carve into one of his designs, he had also brought in a piece of rough cut stock, and basically it's like the outside part of the tree. So it was very uneven cut. There was bark on the outside, and the surface was very uneven. But it was maybe, 18 inches long, 8 or 9 inches tall, and it was really nice for those rustic kind of signs. And my son had been wanting to make a sign for his bedroom, so we went into V-carve. We put a 90-degree half-inch V groove bit into the HF spindle on the Stepcraft 420, and he wrote his name out in V-carve. His name is Daniel, and we used, I think, Times Roman font with bold. We made it bold and centered it on the piece. And what I wanted to do is we wanted to ensure that his name would be centered on the piece of wood. And in order to do that, because the wood wasn't square or rectangular, it was a very odd shape, what I did was I took a photo with my cell phone directly above the machine. And then I imported that photo into V-carve, and I had it in the background. And then all I did was place a starting point, which I made the starting point the center of the workpiece, and I put his name in that, from that, based on that starting point. Now all I had to do at that point was to figure out what the center point was on the piece of wood, put a little dot there, and that's where I indexed my XY0 for that job. And by doing that, I was sure that the part or the name would fit exactly centered on the board. So it was a little trick that I did using just a camera phone that worked awesome. Now, one thing we had to do prior to actually V-carving his name into the board was, because the surface was uneven, there was about an 1/8 inch difference between the high and low spot on it. So we put a 1/4 inch end mill in the machine, because that's all I had. I would have used an inch or 1.5 inch fly cutter to quickly level everything, but all I had was a 1/4 inch end mill. So we put that in, and basically what I did was, again, using that photograph, I drew node points around the surface of the wood piece, and that way I could have drawn a rectangle the same size, and that would have worked too, because the end mill would have just went back and forth, and it would have leveled out the surface. But it would have taken a lot of time because of the odd shape. I would have been cutting air in a lot of places. So by creating node points around the photograph, I basically gave myself about a 1/2 inch border all the way around, just in case it didn't line up completely perfect. And that worked great. I basically told it, I XY0'd it from the highest spot, and we basically said, let's go down 1/8 of an inch. and it went across back and forth and made the surface completely flat. The finish was great, didn't need any sanding. And then we switched over to the V-carve bit and we put his name in there. So essentially I used the CNC like a planer to get the surface flat. And this little trick with using the photograph really saved a lot of time. And I think a lot of people, are looking for little tricks and whatnot to make that. Now, if I was taking that piece of wood normally and putting it on the machine, and I want to try to figure out how to center the work area, the easiest way to do it on an uneven or an odd shaped workpiece is to use the center point. So if you try to use the lower left corner, which is pretty common if you're using square or rectangular stock, that's almost impossible to do on a piece of wood or a shape that's very irregular. So then we set the start point for this in the center. So this just helped me because I wanted to visualize the size of the name. Like I wanted to make sure the fonts were, going to fit within the workable area of this piece. So by using the photograph and then superimposing the carving over it, I was able to get a good idea what the finished piece was going to look like. So it was really cool. We had that mounted on the machine at the fair, and we planed off the surface. Then we put his name in. He's since that night, actually, he was so excited about it. He got home. He was sitting at the kitchen table with black paint, and he painted the letters that were V-carved. Then he took it down to the garage and sanded the surface because he got a little paint that kind of overspilled onto the surface. And I think he's on his 12th coat of aerosol spray urethane right now. He wanted it to have that kind of plastic coated finish. So he's been working on that, and I will post a picture of that on the show notes as well. I think he did a great job, and it's a cool looking sign. It's an example of another thing you can do with a CNC, and this was just something he wanted to decorate his room. He could easily, make these things. You could start a website and say custom personalized wood, name plaques or something, and people would just, if you give you an order, tell you what their name is, you would do the same exact thing. Maybe you work with a local lumber mill to get blanks and then bring them in, and you have everything at your disposal to start a little side business personalizing these names. When I was at that fair, the Big E, a couple weeks ago, there was a guy who was doing something very, very similar with this rough cut wood, and they were hand routing the letters into the plaques, and they were getting between $80 and $120 per sign at the fair. And I heard the router going a lot every time we walked by their booth. So they were making a lot for show, or they were really busy making them for customers. So it's just another example of what you can do. I want you guys to keep that mind going as far as the creativity, not just on what you can create, but is it something that you are interested in doing as a little side business? And if so, drop me an email or leave a comment, and I'd be happy to talk more about the business side of the CNC stuff and kind of coach you along that as well. In the meantime, I want to just thank you for joining me again this week. And if you want to check out the show notes for this episode, it's youcreatepodcast.com/005. And I'll have some photos and some links of stuff that I talked about in those notes. And I don't know if we're going to be doing this, like I said last week, weekly or more than once a week. I guess I'm going to do them kind of as ideas come to me. I'm just going to sit down and record and share whatever I can. I mean, I'm on the phone with a lot of people every day, and that always opens up some new ideas and some of the conversations that I have or I want to share with our listeners here. So I really appreciate it, and thank you so much for the positive comments and for spending a half hour with me. And if you have any other questions, please don't hesitate to drop me a line. Until the next show, have a great week.